Introducing the Massenburg DesignWorks Hi Res Parametric EQ for the Roland VS series, the result of endless hours of design, critical listening, refinement, and more critical listening by some of the most talented ears in the industry. Massenburg DesignWorks, headed by award-winning engineer, producer, and electronic designer George Massenburg. The Massenburg DesignWorks Hi Res Parametric EQ for the Roland VS series.
Let me help you try to understand what equalization is. Maybe you've stumbled across the equalizers in your VS console. Maybe somebody's told you you needed to put more EQ on your track. Maybe you think that equalization is a mystical process that adds something. Sometimes it does. Maybe you'd like to learn how you can make equalization work for you. I'd like to tell you a little bit about MDW EQ for Roland VS, about where it came from, the MDW EQ design, a little bit about equalization in general, how I use equalization, how you can use equalization to make things better. Beyond that, give you an idea of how you can make very, very good recordings with Roland VS. First, I want to tell you that the EQ and the Roland VS is the basic MDW core that took us 3 years of extensive listening and testing to develop to come up with a good digital EQ. There was a time when it was thought that you couldn't build a good digital EQ because digital EQs up to then were grainy and brittle and hard, uncontrollable. You didn't get the result that you remember hearing in analog. And we thought that there would be something, that there should be something better, and we set out to find it. We think that this EQ is unparalleled in its performance. Its accuracy and smoothness is clear. It is a professional EQ, and we think that you can get professional results if you apply it correctly. A friend of mine, George Klaben, has been so kind as to offer a recording that he did on Roland VS, and I think it's terrific. And so I'm going to give you an idea of what the very first thing is that people reach for in an EQ. It's the simplest thing. It's a shelf, an overall shelf. You might use a high-frequency shelf in mastering to brighten something up, to bring something out. So a shelf is a great place to start an EQ because you're safe. It doesn't have the resonance of a peak. It's also completely reversible later if you make a mistake. Okay, here's a jazz piano recorded live in a club by George Klaben. It's a pretty good performance, but the piano's boxy, a little muddy. Sorry, George. We're gonna look at two things to take out. We're gonna take a little bit out at 3 to 400. We're gonna look around. Let's take some of this down. Let's take a lot down, and let's take it a little broader. So we've got the Q. And we're going to listen to how the piano sounds as we move through the peak of the dip. We've got something in the low end too, but let's not be confused with that. Okay, let's. Wow. Hear that boinkiness? Here's our mid frequency. Our lower mid frequency, it's around 386 hertz. Taking that boinky thing right out. We want to hear it in balance with the timbres around it, with the lows and mids. Let's work on the low frequencies. I think it's between 70, between 50 and 100. There's a boink. We're using the parametric as an analyzer. We're using the parametric in our ears as an analyzer. passing through frequencies and hearing them is loud. Well, here's something. I mean, there's piano there, but there's a lot more bass there. Let's take that out. All right, so bass in, bass out. It's a close call between losing bass crosstalk and low end of the vocal. The vocal's warm because it's close mic, so we can afford to lose some of it. But maybe we want to be a little lower to catch more of the bass. Let's see if, yeah, that's more profitable. Let's make it a little sharper. Okay, so here's flat. Here's with both corrections in the low end. Let's bring up some mids. Let's brighten this a little bit. So always start with a shelf. It's flat. EQ.